Today, I'm thrilled to talk with someone who showed me what a true visionary looks like. Welcome, John Simon. At Powering ProjeX, we champion the growth of project people, empowering every subscriber to lead with distinction, drive impactful outcomes, and turn vision into victory. Through sharp insights, inspiring stories, and energetic conversations, we will celebrate the exceptional people who transform industries and build a better world. Welcome to the Powering ProjeX podcast, where we explore the strategies, stories, and insights that make projects thrive. I'm your host, DK, and today we're diving into a topic that's very close to my heart as a project manager, the importance of vision in projects. But before we kick off, if you want to join a community that puts your career first, gain global connections, cutting-edge skills, and hear from voices just like yours who are shaping the project management industry, subscribe to the podcast now. So, the problem statement for today. Does the project management industry need stronger project sponsorship? When a project sponsor has a clear, bold vision, it's like having a roadmap through the chaos. It makes defining the project, setting the boundaries, and even navigating those tricky grey areas so much easier. But visionaries, they are rare. Far too often, projects are sponsored by middle managers who don't fully own the scope, the process, or the innovation that we're trying to bring to life. And that's when things get really messy. Delays pile up, teams lose focus, and opportunities slip away. Today, I'm thrilled to talk with someone who showed me what a true visionary looks like. Welcome, John Simon. John is the head of information management at Metro Trains Melbourne, a leading operator of Melbourne's suburban railway network. With over 25 years of experience in business intelligence, John excels at driving innovation, solutions, and delivering transformative data strategies. His leadership has been instrumental in enhancing Metro's information system, supporting operational efficiency and passenger experience over 222 stations. As a graduate of Southern Cross University, John is known for his ability to envision and implement cutting-edge technologies, fostering data-driven decision-making. And based in Melbourne, he is a respected figure in the rail industry. John, how are you?
Hey, Danielle. I'm good, thank you. How are you?
Good. Very well, thank you. Thanks for joining us today. So years ago, I had the privilege of working with you, a leader in analytics who saw a chance to reinvent how our international business accessed and used data to create real-time insights. John didn't just focus on the technology, he reimagined our infrastructure and the skills that we needed to succeed. With incredible stakeholder management skills, he drove the adoption of that across a company of 30,000 employees, which was not an easy feat. And even as an executive with a packed schedule, John made space to guide and nurture the project, embodying the spirit of innovation. As a project manager, that kind of commitment made all the difference to our digital transformation efforts. And in this episode, we're going to unpack how John's vision shaped his projects, the challenges of leading without it, and what we can learn from his approach. So whether you're a project manager, a sponsor, or just someone who wants to see projects succeed, this conversation is for you. So let's get started. My first question for you, John, starting at the beginning, what sparked your vision for what sparked your vision for analytics projects, and how did you know, or how do you know that it's the right move for a business?
So we had a business problem where we had a lot of valuable data in our data warehouse, but no easy way for our users to access or interact with it. We did have existing tools, but they were slow. The business hated them, and more often than not, the business said, how can I get this into Excel? Which is very frustrating when you've put all that effort in. So I had the idea of creating a portal for our users that was engaging and would allow our users to interact with their data in a variety of formats and more specifically the one that they wanted to, so that they could access the data they needed, and it would be fast and interesting and engaging. So I had an idea. I pulled together my idea and some slides, and I took it to my one-up, who had money and knew he needed to do something but didn't actually have an idea of what that was. So he was happy to support me, which was great. And then we delivered a platform that provided the business with those capabilities that they'd never before experienced. And to be honest, for its time, it was quite novel around the world. So this project really involved setting up the hardware, software, and web design so that we could provide a portal for our users that they could configure for their needs. And after we delivered that, it was migrating thousands of reports across to this platform. 5 years after we started the project, we had over 18,000 internal users.
Wow.
So on the day I left, 18,000 users, including all the way up to the CEO.
Wow. And I remember when we started, you had it running on a dev box as sort of a proof of concept,
It's
and we
still
started
running.
with 1,000 users.
That dev
Wow.
box that's not the production environment, but I know that server is still running.
Wow.
We got a phone call
The
not long
legacy.
ago where someone said, "Oh, what's the password?"
Does it have a big piece of paper
The
on it that
password's
says,
the
please
same.
do not turn
Yeah.
off? Oh, I know that feeling. All right. Well, that's just a legendary story. And I'm so glad that you shared it. So communicating a big vision isn't always easy. What were some of the toughest challenges you faced in getting stakeholders on board, especially around a large organization?
One of the biggest issues that we've faced, and I've faced in other organisations, including where I am now, is you will have pockets of people who have set up their own little cottage reporting industry, and it's their own little fiefdom, and they're in control, and they don't want to give up that power, and so they will try to block anything that will change the way that they have that power. And often the business can be scared because they think, well, if I upset Dave and Dave turns everything off, then I don't have anything. When in fact, I think that should be more of a reason to switch to an enterprise platform.
Yeah, to act.
Yeah, and having that one person doing those things, it's useful when you are when you don't have anything else, but you end up with things like it's running on a lap or a desktop under somebody's desk. It could be kicked out by the cleaner or something. Inconsistent numbers. Nobody knows if the numbers are right. They're prone to errors. Lots of manual handling and manual effort. So that's probably the most common scenario I see, and it was also for us. And I remember you having a particularly unpleasant experience with somebody who thought their job was on the line, even though it wasn't, because we were trying to change the status quo. The other tough challenge that we had was the internal politics. So, as you know, we were in a very political organisation, a lot of internal politics, and people were very happy to tear down someone else's work if they thought that would make them look better. And it never does. It just makes them look petty. But unfortunately, that's what we had to deal with. And then, unfortunately, also that was prevalent from individual contributors all the way up to general managers. So those two are probably the biggest challenges to getting it off the ground and getting it started. And once the ball started rolling, it was hard to stop.
I must say, I wasn't, going to bring it up in today's session, but I still think about that experience and I still tell that story. When we talk about change management, because I think it is a really, really good example of something that I needed to learn that I didn't understand in as much detail when we were going through that initiative for all of the reasons that you've just touched on. People really do own their cottage industry. They really do feel a lot of personal value that is driven for the organisation through the work that they do, and they want to hold that very, very close to them. And it was a really difficult exercise to try and help people understand that making our, data accessibility, is the safer thing to do for the organisation. And also, as you touched on, I mean, you and I have both been in those situations where you get into a meeting and you present some data and everyone's pointing the finger about, is the data and the algorithm right, rather than, let's make some decisions on
Yeah.
what this is telling
Well,
us. So it's
that's an easier thing to do, to blame the data rather than to make a call on the data.
correct. Absolutely. So all really important points. And getting into it now, your stakeholder management was really legendary during that time. And I remember how you had a knack for winning people over. So can you share with us a particular moment when you really turned resistance into support for the project?
Yeah. One example would be getting the marketing analytics team on board. They were very used to doing their own thing, and they were also quite protective of their own patch, which was fair enough. So, when doing these things, you need to be able to offer something. And I, the way that I have focused for at least, let's say, the last 15 years or more, is my job is about trying to make people's lives easier with data. And so that's really the vision that I try and always share with my team, and with stakeholders. So I'm not trying to make their lives harder. I want to try and make it easier through automation, through making it they can get the insights faster, etc. So with marketing, it was really around saying, hey, we'll give you the tools, we'll give you the training, we'll give you the platform so that you can share your data with your own internal stakeholders. So they got to have control of their own destiny on a shared platform. And this was important to them as they got to control the look and feel of the portal and what their customers saw. They got to publish their own content without us being involved. And they didn't have to pay for setting up and running a platform. And it was also important for me, especially early on, as I'd rather have those people on board and in the tent rather than outside the tent, and how the rest of the expression goes. And so I want them supporting my platform and being an advocate for me and what I was trying to do rather than trying to compete with me. We also had a fellow delivery team that had previously tried to tear down the project. And when dealing with that team, it was about trying to explain how they would benefit more by working with me rather than against me. And working with me would allow them to offer a better customer and a better product to their customers, and then they could charge more for their services and they can get more income. And that was quite tough at first. But really, a lot of this is about showing you're trying to offer something to somebody, even though you're saying, "Hey, give me money," or whatever it may be. You're trying to offer something to them so that they feel like they're also winning. I think, in general, the keys to getting buy-in, you want to be able to identify the common pain points so that your audience knows that you understand their pain. Ideally, identify quick wins like automation, consolidation, etc. You want to make it engaging. So, most people think data's boring and dry, which surprises me. But but if you can make something engaging, then you make people want to be a part of it. You want to be able to align what you're doing to their business value, which is really important. So that could be efficiency, reduce support costs, not being stuck with a single point of failure, like Dave, who decides he's going on annual leave and he has to run the job when he's on holidays in Indonesia. And then being able to have some use cases, I think, is also really beneficial to show that. So a testimonial. So one of the things I did was say, hey, here's what this other person has said in their team. It used to take them, they could do reporting once a month, and it would take them 9 hours to pull that together. And now they get reporting daily, and it takes them 0 time. And I think, really importantly as well, all of those things are great, but to smooth the way, you want to be able to show that you have a path to upskilling existing staff to the new product with training, coaching, knowledge, resources, etc. You need to take people on the journey. You don't want them to feel like, hang on, if we do this, I'm going to be left behind. You need to be able to say, hey, no, you're still needed because you're the person with the knowledge. We are a very big, I can say, hey, rather than you spending all your time pulling the numbers together, you now get to spend your time saying, what does this mean for us and what should we do about it? And that's where the value is. And I think lastly, it's around making sure your pitch is not a technical pitch because nobody cares about that. Yes. It's about making people's lives easier. So you want to ensure your pitch is around how you're going to make their lives easier. They can spend less time doing these boring things and more time adding value to the business.
Yeah.
So those are probably
all
the
really
main
good points.
Things. And I think a lot. I had done. I have experience and a background teaching martial arts. I did for a long time, so I didn't have a problem with being in front of and presenting in front of large people. But I had to had to hone my skills, my presentation skills. We were a CapEx-driven organisation, so if we didn't have CapEx, then people wouldn't get paid. So we had to go out and hunt for that CapEx. So I got a lot of practice at selling the art of the possible and doing my jazz hands to excite people and say, hey, here's what you can do. Just get on board and sign that check.
Absolutely. Yeah. And you generated such a following. Like, I can't tell you, because by the time I arrived and we were ready to actually sort of execute, you had smoothed the waters so much through all of these conversations that you'd had, trying to sell the art of the possible and making sure that, people wanted to come on this journey. You had a lot of grassroots sort of momentum, and it just made everything so much easier, which then leads me into my next question, because one thing that stood out to me was how your vision gave us really clear boundaries and also that room to innovate. So how did you use your vision to define the project while keeping it flexible?
I think there's always going to be things that come up. So there'll always be difficulties to solve and opportunities that can really make a project a success. That weren't defined or thought of at the start of the project. So I think it's important to leave room in your plan for both. And, if you don't use that time, then great, you've come in under budget and ahead of time. And there's nothing worse than being on a project and being told, we can't deliver that thing that the business really wants, that they've thought of, because, hey, we need to hit this deadline. Even though it might just take 2 or 3 more days. And I've worked on things where so much money was spent and you go, we just need a little bit more money and it'll be done. And they go, no, not doing it now. And you go, you've just blown millions of dollars. It's wasted. So I think, you obviously as a project manager and as a sponsor, you want to be able to make sure you deliver on time. But you don't want to miss those opportunities that will really make the project a success and buy you that credit for the next time you want to do something. You want people to go, hey, I'd rather someone said, it was a few days late, but this is amazing, rather than, we got it on time. It's okay. I want people to go, wow. And I think as well, especially in the space I was in, a lot of people don't know what they want till they see it.
Yes.
So my suggestion is to start small with a small team. You want to think about what's the problem that people are having, focus on solving that, prototype, innovate, collaborate with the business, and it's always easier to change direction when you've got a team of 2 or 3 people rather than with a very large team. So if you, that's what Pixar does. So they'll have 2 people working on a project, doing the script, working through everything, and that might take years, but when they're ready to execute, it's all been thought through. And so all they've spent is that money on those two people. And imagine if you're building a building and then you say, oh, actually, we needed to move it over 1 metre, and you've
Yes.
got 100 men on or 100 people on the
Yes.
and the workforce there, and
The
you've got
bigger
to
the ship,
stand
the
down for 3
harder.
months. Yeah.
Correct. Correct.
So I think start
And that,
small, work through those issues, have that collaboration and prototyping, and make sure everybody's happy, and then you can roll it out. But also still give yourself some time and space on the project, because things will always come up. And we're all used to, having contingency in our budgets, but also think about, well, it shouldn't just be about if there's a problem, it can also be about if there's an opportunity.
correct. This is such wise words. Wise words. Your vision wasn't just about technology. It really covered the infrastructure and the skills too. So how did you make sure that all those pieces fit together to support the bigger picture?
Well, I think the project should never be about tech. It should be, like I said, about making people's lives easier. So if you think about Apple, they're a tech company, but what differentiates them is not they've got more features or more CPU. It's that everything they do makes their customers' lives easier with the phone or the watch or the laptop. So I think for any tech project to be a success, you need to focus on the people and the process as well. So that means, how do they use that technology? I know of situations where people have gotten upset because, hey, we're going to bring in this new product, and especially like with the blue collar workforce, they've said, hang on, is this more keystrokes? Because if it is, then I'm not doing it. So those things are important about thinking about the processes, and really what we should be doing is trying to make the processes more streamlined, and the tech helps that. And then also for the people, think about the training. You need to spend the effort to make sure that they want to use that final product. And I've had experience working on projects where you go, this is great, we delivered about a year ago, we delivered an AI product, and didn't get the buy-in from the person who had to actually do the work, so it just sat there unused. And then, we had some conversations, and we changed the way that the person had to interact with the solution. And now that person loves the product, makes their lives so much easier because they don't have to go through and do all this stuff. The AI predicts it and they go, yeah, that's great, I'm happy with that. Or actually, no, I'm going to change it. Click, 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 done. Rather than that person spending hours every month. So I think it's really important to not focus just on the tech part, but on the change and the comms management if you want the successful project. Because, successful shouldn't just be it's on time and on budget. It means people actually using your product and you being an advocate for it.
Yes. Yeah. And they're really important things, because I wonder too whether your focus on the skills really helped us with the change management effort, not in the one example we talked about earlier, but overall it was extremely successful because we did not internally market this product. It just grew. It became like as I said earlier, a grassroots movement. People just started to clue on to the fact that as much as we did focus on skills and training and all those kinds of things, especially with the replication of, we had some functions in the business that were performing reporting. We had to transition them to the new tool and teach them the skills to do it. That helped us with the movement as well, because people didn't feel like they were displaced. They felt like they were part of a journey, right? And so it felt invigorating to them that they were being taught new skills. They were being given a new platform, a new shiny tool, and it allowed them to produce what they were producing in a much quicker timeline, without sort of the heavy burden of workload from the previous tool suite that they had. So that was a big win for us as well. But the ripple effect of this project was huge. I've just touched on the numbers, and I can't say enough. From the moment I joined at 1,000 users to when I left at 10,000 users, it was just absolutely amazing, and no internal marketing at all. So can can you tell us a story about how your vision changed the way the enterprise worked as a result of this tech and the decision and the project that you sponsored?
Yeah, so probably the first one was the Reporting Centre of Excellence. That they had over 3,000 reports. Half of those were duplicated, and there's a lot that weren't used. So we went through a process of consolidation, decommissioning and migration of that reporting. And that simplification of that reporting estate meant that there was less to maintain. And with the new capabilities, we could put more focus on the reports that mattered and make those reports more relevant and provide more insights. And because we automated a lot of those activities as well, it means that our team could get on and do other things. So when people are stuck doing a manual process, you just think, yeah, but it's okay. It's like an hour or two a week. Sure. But then add the next thing on and the next thing on. And then all of a sudden, they don't have any time. And so even I remember talking to finance where they said the data comes out, it gets processed into the general ledger, and we've got a few days to work out what are the insights before we have to send it out to the business. And we just don't have enough time to collect all that data from the system, understand what this means, and then say what we should do, and then send that out. So us automating those things meant that they got the data within, let's say, the next day, and then they had far more time to actually focus on the things that were valuable to the business. So that was a big thing. And it also
that is a real
that,
game changer.
Yeah,
Sorry,
yeah.
it's such a game changer for organisations, because I still work in organisations and I see it with project management reporting all the time. I'm producing a report now that will be checked over 2 weeks, that will be reported in a month from now.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then we talk about, well, you know, a lot's changed and happened, and when it comes to issues and risks, a lot can manifest in that period of time. So, sorry to interrupt you.
No,
Keep
that's
going.
Like a second example of that would have been while we had internal stakeholders, there were other parts of the business that had their own internal stakeholders, and we managed to convert them and get them onto the team. So in the retail, there was a retail analytics team, we had the marketing analytics team. So they got to have something for themselves. And, you know, as I said, so we had 18,000 internal users, so, you know, more than half of the size of the company
business.
were using that information and data across the entire organisation. And I know that 8 years later, after I've left, it's still being heavily used, and they can't get off it, and I think that's fantastic.
That is such a win. That is a legacy. Yeah. That is a legacy. Another thing that I really loved about the platform was the fact that we opened up enterprise data to people that would not otherwise have had access to it. And what that meant was when they were, you know, when you are in your siloed department and have access to your own team's department, you only have a one-directional view of the organisation. But through having the platform that we built and having so many data inputs from other environments, they were able to blend data sources and see the customer experience from so many different angles, which was a real competitive edge, I think, for the enterprise. Would you agree? Am I remembering it correctly?
No, that's right. Absolutely. I mean, even where I am now, we've developed a solution called Customer Voice, where we want to look at complaints data. We want to look at we get the surveys done by the government around customer experience. There's a CXI and there's a passenger experience, so different surveys. We combine that information with incidents and so unplanned incidents on the network, so that we can actually have a view of what our customers' issues are. And any one of these in silo, it's hard to know. But putting this information together with patronage and things like that allows us to have a better view of the issues impacting our customers. And we built an AI solution so that over the weekend, if there were issues occurring on the network and if people complain, we automatically, there's a lot for our passenger relations team to get through, so we can we grab those complaints and read through them, and then automatically classify them, so that at the 12:30 meeting on the Monday, our Chief Operating Officer can understand what were the issues over the weekend that our customers experienced, where were they, and then the question then is, what are we going to do about it?
Yeah.
And then they can see, when was the last time we had this and how often is this happening? So that automation really makes and using AI and all these other things, it makes for our business to be able to respond more quickly by bringing all this data together and that they just wouldn't have had before.
And this is such a win, because when you think about our experience and our age group, John, don't mean to throw us under the bus, but we come from the world where, do you remember the gold-plated reporting standard that took, 6 to 12 months for you to just get one data source into an environment where it was gold-plated and you could actually report from it? We come from the age where it took a long time to develop insights. And then, when you add the time it takes to make decisions, but what this technology has allowed is for large organizations to move quickly and pivot and make decisions really quickly. And it's gold for big organizations. Like I can only imagine how excited a leadership team would be, because they love to make decisions at that level. And giving them the insights that is so close to real time must be really exciting for them.
Yeah. Probably even a third example was a report that went to the CEO daily that used to go out in an Excel format. Here's your numbers. And I remember asking at the time, does the CEO have a photographic memory? Because how are they going to know what this number means? How many calls to the call centre? So we redesigned that and put it on our portal, made it available for them. They could look at it on the mobile app. And now they had a lot more context and were far more able to say, hey, there's a problem here. I can see it's happening over these weeks. We need to do something. So just all of those things coming together made a big difference, I think, right across the organisation.
Yeah. And does that mean then that AI has been like that next level accelerator for analytics and where you were? Like, would it have developed on its own anyway, but has AI helped you to increase the value?
In my current organisation, we've had a few AI projects. I think this is where it might get controversial. I think we're in the hype cycle for AI at the moment, where people will say, I've got this stuff, can it make a decision for me? It's like, you haven't defined what the issue is. So how does it know, where is it going to get this data
Asking
from
the
to
right
actually
questions.
make a decision? So there's still all of that work that needs to be done. I think, and often the huge companies can do this because they've got a lot of money to spend. This stuff is still very expensive. So we're working through at the moment, how do we deliver the things where we can deliver the value that we want, but in a cost-effective manner, because I don't have millions of dollars to burn. And so,
Interesting.
Yeah, I think there's a way to go, and I'm sure it'll get there with things like DeepSeek, where they're being able to run on smaller amounts of compute and it's cheaper. I think that it will get there soon. But it's just changing so quickly, it's hard to tell.
It is hard to tell. Now, you were an executive with a lot on your plate, and yet you stayed so in touch and so involved in the project. And I must say, one of the benefits that we had was that we were literally all co-located on that one floor, and we sat around your desk. So you were surrounded by us. And I remember, because there was the 5 teams all running at the same time, and literally the heads of within, a meter of you, which was wonderful. But how did you balance your role and still find time to nurture the project?
I'll be honest, it did consume a lot of my time, especially in the early days, both in the office and after hours. But I loved it, so that made it easy. So part of what I need to do was develop the architecture, the operating model in terms of how we would operate with the business, governance, the look and feel, new features, where we want to go next, the roadmap. So I had to do all of that as well as migrate 3,000 users. And then also my other team that was doing day-to-day development work, because we still had business users who had problems and wanted solutions. And we needed to do that because we needed to get that money because we were CapEx driven. So I needed good people, and so that's where you came in. And I specifically asked for you, Daniela, to manage that project because there was chaos, and I knew you could come in and draw, create order out of that chaos. And so I really needed people that I could trust to run those different areas, so that I felt like, right, they've got it in control, and because we were co-located, and I tried to make people feel comfortable and asking me questions and approaching me. So I think it's really important that in that kind of role, you need to be able to delegate, and you need to be able to delegate to people that you trust, and trust is vital. And then that can help free up your time to focus on some of these other things that, if you don't keep nurturing them, they can fade away.
Entropy. And can I ask you then, because one of the things I found astonishing about that project as well was that you had drawn in some pretty heavy hitters from the industry. I mean, people that have gone on to have extremely successful careers. I didn't even know how you became friends with these people, but we were not particularly an organization that, paid highly or anything of that nature. I think you probably joined, you joined that kind of organization for the stature of it rather than for the money that you're going to earn. But it was very interesting that you were able to, there was something about this project that obviously drew these people in. What do you think that was?
So it's interesting because there's some of those people have gone on to, I've still got some of those people working with me now.
Yeah.
So there's a few of them working for me now we've worked together 3 or 4 times in the past.
Wow.
And some have come and gone on to do their own things, or gone, one's at Microsoft now. And he was one of the best guys in the world at what he did. But I think, I don't know, I think like attracts like. And I think these people were curious. They wanted to deliver value. They were, there was things that they thought they could do that were going to help. And so I think being able to trust them and say, hey, this is what we're trying to do. So for me, it was around saying, this is what I want to do, and this is what I think we need to do, but you tell me, how do we get there? And how are we going to do this? And so it helped. There was no egos in that. It was... and I remember hearing a story, reading something years ago about somebody at Microsoft who said, in the old days, like in the 90s, it was very much a nerd-to-nerd network, and it was, and that's what we had. But it was also about the right thing. What's the right thing to do? Not what's the thing like for politics or anything else. It's like, well, we could do that, but that's going to bite us later on. And it's not like, well, I'm not going to be here. It's like, okay, so what's the right thing to do? So we tried to make sure we did the right thing, and we all had that same mentality of, we want to achieve this great thing, and so we were all working in the same direction. And because I also gave them the freedom, and I said, hey, can you try and do this? And I'm not trying to micromanage anybody. I've got too much on my plate. So I'm trusting that they're going to do the right thing, and they did. And
they did.
And I think it's great when you can find those people and you trust them, and I know, I can just hand this off to this person, and I know they're going to do a great job, and I don't have to worry about it.
Yeah, yeah. Each person on that team really felt like they were a valuable contributor to what we were doing, and they were. Do you know what I mean? They really thought through the issues and the development. And I know that the development was particularly difficult. You know, there were lots of trialing and testing and trying to work out what was right and how was the best way of doing it. And I remember you, you know, always being quite critical of how we were building things and what we were building. But that was a really good thing for us because it meant that you were providing that really important leadership, but allowing people to trial things, which I think was, you know, really important to the project and people's sense of their value and contribution to it. So I thought that was great.
Well, I think if you
Now,
just take it back to
yeah,
what people value, was it purpose, autonomy, and mastery? So if you give them a
yeah,
purpose and you say, I want you to go and do this thing, but you figure out how to do it, but here's like the guardrails, which is, well, we need to make sure we
correct.
can deliver it and it's sustainable and maintainable and using all the right, it's like an enterprise solution, but then also allowing them to share their mastery and improve their own mastery. People want that.
Correct. This is true. This is true. We all do. Um, Looking back, what was the biggest lesson that you learned from that experience that you would pass on to other project sponsors and leaders?
Um, I'll give you two. So first one, as I just said, hire the right people. People who are naturally
Yes,
curious and are driven to provide that genuine business value. But the second, I think, and it's one of those things where I go, yeah, when I would hear it, but I never really gave it much credence until this, which is you need to work on your own presentation and persuasion skills. And whilst I had a vision, it would never have happened if I hadn't focused on my own learning to improve my own presentation and selling skills. Because you need to get that buy-in, because we work with other people. So I need to take those people on the journey. And I know for tech people or introverted people in general, it's often an uncomfortable experience being that center of attention.
yes,
But if you can learn how to do this, you'll make the project a success and you'll make your career a success.
yeah,
Because that's, what Microsoft would call it. I remember they had a guy they called their evangelist. He was the guy who'd go out there and get everyone whipped up. And that's kind of like, oh yeah, I can do that. And that made me realize, yeah, I need to do this. And so, I read the books and I practiced and I did all of those things so that I got better at doing that and my jazz hands and selling the art of the possible. I think the other things would be those steps I outlined before. You would think about cheap and agile and with lots of prototyping. It's hard to get success breeds success, and I'll come back to that in a minute. But, when you're starting out, you need to get that trust. And so starting small, cheap, prototyping, showing what's possible is great. You need to be able to understand what those problems are that you're trying to solve and articulate them and show how they
yes,
align with delivering business value. Focus on your soft skills and also consider your audience, that you have different audiences and tailor your meetings to those audiences. So I think part of the reason why that project was a success was because I didn't just go, well, I'll go to the executive directors. I went to the executive directors. I went to the general managers. I went to and the directors and the general managers and all the way down. And I'd talk to the people who are doing the work because I needed to get them on board as well. Because this person could say, do this thing. And that person down there is like, yeah, I'm not doing that. So I
yeah,
needed them all on board. And so you need to tailor your pitch to those different audiences because they all have different needs. But you also need to be thinking what's in it for them and make sure you're inclusive of all of those different groups so that you've got that full coverage of the people you're trying to get on board.
Absolutely. And just it's really funny because as you're saying it, it's really all coming back to me. I think one of your strengths was the fact that because you understood the technology so deeply, when we would go and speak to reporting analysts and those kinds of folk, you understood the tech and how the data comes together. And I remember you going home and actually rebuilding their reports in this dev box that we used as the proof of concept. Um, and you did that over and over and over again to try and really perfect the way that the solution was working. And you were then able to not only show them, look at what I've built for you, kick the tires on it. I'm going to give you a license to the box. I want you to come and test it and trial it. And slowly, slowly, you won them over because by being able to touch it and feel it and see it, and then they took that license away and started to use it, they got excited themselves. And then the great thing was then when we'd have steering committee meetings, you were able to say, okay, well, we've been able to improve this for one user, 5 users, 10 users, 100 users. And then when we got to the strategic meetings, it was very easy for you to say, well, this is what you were doing before, and this is what we're doing now. And we've cut hours out of that.
Yeah.
And we've cut out, and we've made it a safer thing for the organization enterprise wide because we are no longer, we're no longer bound to Dave on floor
Yeah.
35, and him not being sick or, not having Wi-Fi today as to stopping you from getting your reports. It's all going to work seamlessly and we've been able to automate it. And instead, Dave's going to provide a value add, which is I'm going to review these figures and I'm going to tell you what I actually think are the key decisions that need to be made
Yeah.
as a result of it. And I think just the fact that you had that technology knowledge as well was just so important as the way you went around it, or went about it. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I will say one last thing. I think also what helps is actually there's two last things. If you can piggyback off a larger transformational project, see if you can do that. So if you've got a smaller project but there's a bigger one happening, they're going to have more resources that you can leverage. They'll get into the meeting rooms and that you can't get into. And so then all of a sudden, well, we're doing this other larger piece, but here comes your thing to help take advantage of that. Then I think that's going to really help you.
Good point.
So my second point was around success breeding success. So when we built the platform, but then the issue was after a while, well, I wasn't very happy with the data visualization component. And so I figured, this is before Power BI came out or anything like that, so I figured, how hard could it be? So we built our own product that ran in the browser and would allow people to interact with the data and build their own reports, and that was a great success. But I wouldn't have gotten that money if I hadn't been successful with the first thing. So
Right.
I think if you start small, build up, get that trust, so then people are more happy to say, oh, you need some money? Okay, sure. Rather than me coming in cold.
Yeah.
So I think that's also important. If you can, like I said, don't try and aim for well, you can aim for the stars, but don't go for the biggest thing you can. You need to build up to it, and then that will help
Start small.
get that success, and then keep building.
Correct. Yeah. So last one. How can companies build a culture where vision thrives? So not just sponsors, but in project teams too. So what can we do to encourage that mindset?
I think it comes down to trust again. You need to trust the people you have to deliver and give them the space and the direction to develop their ideas. So they need to know that you support them, and you need to be able to create that environment where it's say, hey, it's okay to, I want you to try these things. And sometimes you need to be explicit because some people are naturally shy or not risk takers. I've worked in low trust environments and it's tough. And for anyone that's in one of those environments, it's not you. So don't take it as a
Yeah.
reflection on you as a person, but that's on your manager. I think, and again, going back to the way to build that trust is to get around this, just to start small, deliver value, and deliver good news. So
Yes.
make sure you sell what you're doing and communicate your successes so that it reflects well on your
Yes.
manager, and then your manager wants you to keep doing what you're doing because it makes them look good.
Yes. Very good point.
And I think, going back to being a leader, trust your people, create a vision. As I said, mine was I want to make people's lives easier with data. I want to communicate that vision to my team and say, this is where we're heading, and I need your help, and I need your ideas to innovate and make that vision happen.
Yeah. All really important things. So, key takeaways today for our project managers. Should I leave it with you?
You want me?
Yeah. Do you want to do it?
No,
What are
I'll
the
leave that
key
one to you.
takeaways? All right. So I think we talked a little bit about leveraging data-driven insights for effective sponsorship, which was really good. Championing innovation to meet evolving needs. And our needs were really evolving because when I look back on this now, what I realize is that we were learning through how and what the business were doing as we were doing all of this. And once again, because of that focus on innovation, where we would find things that were quick wins, we batted that out as quickly as we possibly could. But we were constantly thinking about which of these examples allows us to use the innovation and the platform in its best possible way. And I think all of that really, really helped because, you know, I don't think at the time there were many innovation projects that really got ahead. Like when I must say, I had this discussion with a CEO just recently where I said, I really want to work on innovation projects. And he said, Daniela, there's no such thing. Everyone's just trying to fix stuff that's broken, and I was like, oh, and I had one of those Elon Musk moments where I was like, life cannot be just one problem after another. There must be something in this that drives us forward. And I think that's why I'm personally so attracted to these kinds of projects. But it was very attractive for our organisation. I know that it was one of the key reasons why people wanted to get on board because it was highly innovative at the time. And for anybody out there listening to this, you must understand what we were talking about BI platforms and BI dashboards and, I don't know, they called it Power View and Power Pivot back then. But this was circa 2013. So
Yeah,
this
it
was
was even
12
before Power
years
Pivot.
ago. Correct. Oh, there you go. So this was really, really new at the end. At the beginning. And I remember thinking to myself, God, this is a bit bleeding edge. Like I'm not sure that we know what this is actually capable of and how it's going to evolve. But I think a really good team and a really strong sponsor made all of the difference. Yeah, it really took us to a new height of success that I don't think I've ever experienced on a project up until that point of my career and possibly not since. So well done. All right. So I'd just like to ask you one last question before we wrap up. As a project sponsor, are you still learning?
Always. I focus on things where I think this is something I need to learn, and I still run training on different things because I feel like if you want to get good at something, try and teach it because you have to. What you present is like 10% of what you need to know because someone's always going to ask you, well, what about this? Or what about that? So if ever I do a presentation on something, whether it's technical or non-technical, I'm always got that fear that someone's going to ask me a question I don't know and I'm going to look like a goose. And to be honest though, I have gotten used. I'm very comfortable saying I don't know something. But if I'm presenting on something, I want to know about it. And so there will be things where I think, okay, I need to learn more about this. I need to learn more about that. But there's so much happening in the tech world that I also feel like I can't possibly know everything. So I need to know just enough and then and I have someone in my team who I can ask, hey, how does this
Yeah.
work? And so they get good at that thing, and I just need to know enough about what they're doing, so that I'm comfortable enough with where things are going, and I can explain it.
Awesome. Awesome. Thank you so much. So as we wrap up, I want to say a huge thank you to John Simon today for joining us. His story is a powerful reminder of what's possible when vision drives a project. And it's not just about having the right tools or plans. It's about clarity and inspiration and the courage to lead through uncertainty. So for me, working with you and how much easier my job was as a PM with a visionary leader is, I can't explain enough. But even when that's missing, your insights gave us this playbook, and we asked lots of smart questions. We aligned with what really mattered, and we pushed for clarity. And that's what ProjeX is all about. It's really about working our way through challenges, right? And especially when you're delivering something that's brand spanking new. So thank you so much to everybody for tuning into the podcast today, to Powering ProjeX. If you want to join a community that puts your career first, gain global connections and cutting edge skills, and hear from voices just like John's, who are shaping the project management industry, please do subscribe, drop us a review, and tell your friends. And until next time, keep powering your projects with purpose and maybe a little bit more vision. See ya.
Thanks.
The content provided in this podcast is for informational and educational purposes only and does not constitute professional, legal, or financial advice. The opinions expressed by the host and guests are their own and do not necessarily reflect the views of any affiliated organisations or sponsors. While we strive to provide accurate and up-to-date information on project management methodologies and related topics, no guarantee is made regarding the completeness, accuracy, or applicability of the content to your specific circumstances. Listeners are encouraged to consult with qualified professionals before making decisions based on the information shared in this podcast. The hosts, guests, and producers are not liable for any losses, damages, or outcomes resulting from the use of this podcast's content. By listening to this podcast, you agree to assume all risks associated with the application of the information provided. Thank you for tuning in, and we hope you'll find value in our discussions.